First off, thank you for all the well wishes and get betters. I have gotten better. Not fully there yet, but I'm functional. I'm going to do a little work on an Epiphone Sheraton. This one is from the mid-90s and it was made in Korea. I believe I've mentioned it before, but those Korean Epis from that period are some of the nicest arch tops ever produced by the company. Epiphone is putting out some great stuff right now too, actually, but I'm consistently blown away by these. They were not bargain basement guitars at the time of their release, and the fit and finish were really top-notch. The pickups were good. The necks all seem to be, not narrow in nut width, but quite slim front to back, and a lot of people really like them. The Sheraton model goes all the way back to Gibson's initial semi-hollow designs. It's not a replica, it's a sibling of the ES-335, etc. Came about in the end of the 50s. The Sheraton was the deluxe model, along the lines of the ES-355. The original one had wider or more purfling lines on it. This also has the distinctive vine inlay on the headstock, which was the hallmark of the fanciest Epiphones. In the 1960s, these are every bit the guitar that a ES-335 was, with the exception of the pickups. They started off using New Yorker single coils, which were a leftover from pre-Gibson Epiphone days. They had some that were kept over in stock. In the 1960s, they shifted to mini buckers. But, if you look at the total number of Sheratons made between 1961 and 1970, when U.S. production stopped, they're incredibly rare. Just over 600 made total. If you find a cherry red one with factory vibrato, 20. In a decade, that was it. And they sell for about 1/3 of what the comparable Gibson models bring in, even though they were made in the same place, by the same people, on the same equipment. And in some cases, they're much rarer. It's another situation of, if you're in the market to purchase an upper-end Epiphone in 1963, wouldn't you just get the Gibson instead? But really, today, if you buy the vintage Epiphone, you could put the savings and money into buying a set of PAFs and trick it out. Or not. In the 70s, production went to Japan, along with the rest of the Epiphone line. They eventually got full-sized Gibson, actual Gibson, humbuckers in them, rather than the mini-buckers. And there were other changes too. We have evidence here of a stop tailpiece, making this a Sheraton 2 model. They got rid of the frequencator and put a stop on there. Players of note: John Lee Hooker toured with one of these for the last decade of his life. Had a signature model made too. Noel Gallagher of Oasis too had a number of them. Bunch of different Epiphone products in his stable. Yes, this is a sinister model. And it hit the floor. There's a certain kind of psychic damage that accompanies that kind of thing. It's akin to dropping an infant, I suppose. But this went bonk on the side that's away from the player. There's a little bit of a dent and some finish chipping happening here. The owner actually told me when he brought it in that he had to hunt for a camera angle that would really show off the damage when he sent me the picture initially to its most grisly extent. And I was kind of taken aback when I saw it for reals, because it doesn't look nearly as awful. I'd like to reassure owners of these that the sides, sometimes called the ribs, in these, they're not very thin, solid pieces of wood. They're laminated on a form from several sheets of veneer, essentially making plywood. It's about 1/8 of an inch thick, so they're not ultra fragile. They can take a lot, actually, and in many cases it's the floor that suffers more damage than the side. I'll replace some of the missing color with various artists' markers. These are alcohol-based touch-up markers. I'll lightly scrape off any that made its way onto the binding. Then I'll flood the area of the dent and the missing lacquer with thin super glue. Many applications, probably 5 or 6 to fill that hole. I'll come back with a razor blade scraper and level that off, and also use some 600 and 1200 grit on a flat block. The little dip or recessed area gets smaller and smaller with every application, till at a certain point I can just pat it on using a piece of paper towel here. After final sanding, I can buff things up using my drill, a foam pad, and various kinds of abrasive compounds. That looks okay, and it's sealed up nice and tight. I keep several sizes of these metal hole plugs, which I buy at Home Depot in the hardware section. These go a long way to bettering the appearance of something like this. It's no longer a gaping hole. The neck on this guitar has a very small back bow. I have to loosen the truss rod slightly. Then I'll make some backward noises by playing it right-handed. In here we have a Telecaster. This one is made in Mexico, 2016. Appears to have an ash body with the translucent white finish that you see on sort of late 50s Fenders. It's also got a big 50s neck on it. And it's going to go through some changes as the owner wants to put in some Brad Paisley signature La Brea pickups from Seymour Duncan. And make it into a true Nashville type setup with the addition of a third pickup in between those, and that would be a G&L Comanche, which is this interesting offset pole design, produced primarily to give repair techs a nervous twitch, because that's a weird route. Anyway, these are going to be installed with a Paisley pattern to keep with the Brad Paisley theme. Paisley, the pattern, not the person, goes back a long ways with Telecasters, obviously. 1968, Fender introduced the groovy new finish option, which was essentially decoupage. They glued a Paisley printed paper, it's like wallpaper, to the surface and then submerged it under a thick finish, which happily coincided with their first use of the polyvinyl rather than the super thin nitro lacquer they'd used previously. Those early Paisley guitars are quite sought after. James Burton, of course, is famously associated with his pink example. Missing a screw. This guitar is about 10 years old now, and it's doing exactly the opposite of what a vintage example would. The finish area under the pickguard has turned into a kind of yellowy tone, where everything else is still pretty white. It's reversed. This is an all-parts guard, and it's got evidence of fairly heavy pencil marks on there where someone was trying to do a layout previous, and some slight yellowing too from what could be Sharpie or something. Nothing ever fits. Yeah, I'm going to have to plug every one of those holes. So I'll pull out the pickups. I'll extend the line of the neck over the pickguard so I can derive a center line and keep the pickup centered. I'll figure out where I want to position this thing. I want it generally centered. So if 1968 was the year of the Paisley wallpaper, the year previous another funny thing happened. In '67, apparently Fender got a shipment of ash body wood that was heavier than usual, and someone decided to alleviate that by strategically routing away areas that were hidden under the pickguard, leaving little pockets of space there, hidden. There was no publicity about this. It was not a feature, wasn't mentioned in any of the promotional material, but the guitars from that run have been called smugglers' guitars for a very long time. You could hide jelly beans, or even flavorful spices like oregano, basil, or dried flat-leaf parsley. The owner asked if I could reduce the mass a little bit, so we'll try it. Got 2.65 kilograms, which is 5 pounds, 13.7 ounces. So I've plotted and measured, and I've finally found the correct spot for this thing. Deriving a template is not particularly easy because this has screw tabs which extend farther than the portion that's visible above the pickguard. As I'm not likely to run into very many of these, I think I'm just going to cut it by hand and save myself the time of making a routing template. Besides, doing things like this feels like you're closer to the heart of craft, whatever that means. Well, what it means is that basically I want to keep my hand skills intact and in practice. So, a little sawing, a little filing, a little sanding. Now I can mark the exposed area onto a piece of tape that I've put on the body. And I can glue on my routing template, which in this case is just a rectangle. I didn't want to get too fancy, and also this will basically remove more weight, being part of the smuggler's route. Routing one of these cavities to depth takes longer than you might imagine. I really only advance the cut by about 5 millimeters, 3/16 of an inch or so at a time. Don't want to hog off too much material, and ash is a relatively hard wood. Then I can do something similar with a cutout for the horn. In this case, I think I'll drill some preliminary holes as well on the drill press. This gets rid of a lot of the waste quickly. It's less noisy and annoying than the router. It produces less dust. I made the depth for the pickup pocket the same height as the pickup cover, so that I can just push it down in place and hold it there before removing the pickguard and marking the position for the mounting screws. So it turns out all of that routing saves us about 3.5 ounces, just over 100 grams, which maybe offsets some of the weight of the new pickup. Here I'm plugging the previous screw holes with some dowel because they're just slightly misaligned with the new guard. Had to make a bit of a guess with the Comanche's wiring scheme in terms of the color of the wires, because the GNL website basically has no information on it anymore since it was purchased by Fender a few months back. But I managed to guess right first time. I didn't have to reverse the wires. Hooray. Because we're doing old school Tele, pickup height adjustment has to be done without the guard in place, as the screws aren't accessible otherwise. This gives you tone, because the screws are going directly into the wood and not hanging off the plastic pickguard. Okay, final thoughts. The Paisley La Brea set is very nice. It's a good vintage, spanky sort of Telecaster vibe. Give you all your Danny Gatton sounds, etc. Pairing those with the Comanche is maybe a tough kind of match, because this is one of those instances where pickup output resistance numbers don't really equal perceived volume. You know, they're not that far off. 6.9 k ohms, 7.4 for the bridge. The Comanche is 7.8, so a bit hotter on the meter, but boy is it loud in comparison. I played with the pickup heights, and there is no world where you switch from neck to middle position and get anywhere near the same volume. In this case, it might be useful to have a separate volume control for the Comanche, or use a volume pedal if you're going to play it on stage and switch between positions frequently. But, you know, for recording and stuff, this is a great sounding pickup. It has individually adjustable pole pieces. There's a little Allen screw in the center which you can move up and down, which is useful when you've got like a 7.25 inch radius and you want to balance things out a little bit internally. But, you know, getting these things to match together, Anyway, I think it looks cool too. I'm pretty happy with it.